Copper and Kings Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey finished in American Apple Brandy barrels. So Copper and Kings utilizes the sonic age method where they will play loud bass through their speakers, which in theory allows the bourbon to penetrate a little bit more into the whiskey barrels. Now this one comes in at 111 proof, and the ages of the bourbons used in this are 5, 10, and 15 years old. So definitely not shy on the age statements on this one. Does this American Apple Brandy work in this Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey? Let's find out. All right, guys, so this one comes in at 111 proof. It utilizes 5, 10, and 15-year-old bourbons inside this blend, and it was finished in American Apple Brandy barrels for exactly 12 months. Let's get in the nose. So this one is very fruit forward on the nose. Further into the glass, you do start to pick out obviously some of that apple, as well as a dash of some cinnamon and some nutmeg. Further away, it becomes more of a almost a traditional kind of bourbon. You do get those vanilla notes and some of those caramel notes. You do actually get a little bit of like some red apple further away. It was more of like a tart kind of green apple further into the glass. Yeah, it's weird because again, like it has more of a red apple influence further away and more of a green apple influence further into the glass. Again, a nice combination of the vanillas and the caramels. Nice baking spices there too on the nose. But as it starts to open up a little bit more, I feel like there's some other fruitiness that's starting to come out there as well. Some kind of like pitted fruits, maybe a little bit of like peach, maybe some apricot in there as well. Nice nose, guys. Let's get the palate. Cheers. So on the palate, I do like I like the layers of this bourbon. On the front, again, a lot of sweetness, more of like a caramel kind of vanilla sweetness. Middle of the palate definitely opens up into like it's like a mixed apple. It's almost like a combination of like a red and a green kind of apple of a mixture. But then you throw in like some cinnamon onto the middle of the palate there. Back of the palate, it actually turns a little dark. I do get a small hint of like some leather on the back of the palate, like some dry leather, and then also some oakiness too. So I feel like maybe some of that older bourbon has more of an influence on the back of the palate, and then maybe some of that younger bourbon plays more of a role on the front to middle of the palate. Really nice layers on this one though. Let's get a second sip. So on that second sip, some of that sweetness on the front kind of went away. You still get some of that like caramel, some vanilla, just not as much. It's more muted. That apple mixture really kind of starts to take over, and like that cinnamon comes forward. That nutmeg starts to come forward as well. It really reminds me of like so if you were to like soak apples in some liquor, and then like put them into a pie with some cinnamon and some nutmeg. It's kind of what it reminds me of. But then as it gets into the back of the palate, you do start to pull out a little bit of some darkness in there. And it's more of like a dry kind of leather, and then some oakiness in there too. And it's not necessarily, it's more of a spice kind of oak, not a bitter kind of oakiness. More on the dark dense side, and not so sweet. Definitely offers that dark kind of vibe to it, which I like because it's very kind of bright and forward on the front and middle of the palate. Then all of a sudden it kind of changes up on you on the back of the palate and goes kind of dark. Let's get the last sip, guys. Cheers. It's like a damn spiced apple pie. It's like a spiked spice apple pie. Again, front of the palate, really not much has changed. You still get those subtle hints of like that caramel, vanilla kind of sweetness that leads into that mixture of like a red and green apple, which I kind of like rather than, it being one over the other. A lot of nice kind of fruits there that start to appear. I do actually get a little slight hint of some lemon there that starts to appear there. Some citrus vibes starting to come up. And then again, on the back of the palate, like that cinnamon and kind of nutmeg is starting to flow through into the back with some of that like dark, dense kind of oak and some of that dry leather as it kind of goes down. I mean, this is actually really nice. It drinks its proof. I feel it drinks 111 proof, and again, I don't feel like it's over finished. I feel like they did a really nice job with the finishing on this. Again, it's it'd be different if I was getting that apple influence all the way across the palate, but I'm only really getting that on the middle of the palate. More of a traditional bourbon sweetness up at the front, and then apple influence with some baking spices in there on the middle. The end of the back, it goes very dark, and it's. I feel like it's more of some of those high age bourbons that you're starting to get, that 10 and 15 year, because you're starting to pull out that dried leather and some of that like dark oak, and then those baking spices, that nutmeg and that cinnamon, are starting to kind of flow through and mingle into that to offer a medium to long finish, more on the medium side, but. Yeah, very well done here by Copper and Kings. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to give a big shout out to the team over at Copper and Kings for supplying me with this bottle here to review on the channel. Guys, don't look past this one. This is I think this one might take you by surprise. I think again, I'm not very experienced in apple brandy. I do like brandies, but I've only had a couple whiskeys that have been finished in apple brandy. But this one is extremely flavorful. I think that it was finished for a perfect amount of time. The finishing is not overly dominant. And then what I really like about this one is you get those older bourbon notes on the back of the palate. More traditional, again, sweet bourbon notes up at the front. Middle of the palate is apple dominated with some baking spices. And then into the back of the palate, those baking spices start to kind of mingle together with some dark, dense oak and some leather, offering a medium to long finish. I think Copper and Kings really hit this one out of the park with this release. Definitely a bottle to not walk by, I can tell you that. So Copper Kings, thank you very much for this bottle here to review on the channel. Guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, hit that subscribe button and bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Till next time, guys, stay dusty.